historically, AV has not rendered any judgment on bad actors with share of wallet. We've had companies that their CEOs were accused of propositioning employees' wives. We've had companies show up with booth models
We've had CEOs go to jail, brother.
Exactly. And have any of these things affected the brand's sales in any significant way? Most of these companies still exist today. Companies are still doing business with them.
Say what you want, love it or hate it. The fact remains, we've been talking about this for the last 15 minutes.
Acquisitions and divorces in the market, a special AV over IP show at IBC, and debating the benefits of public and private companies in AV. All that and more next on AV Week. This is AV Week, episode 782, recorded Friday, August 14th, 2026. Reputation Market. This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of the biggest news and stories in the AV and the IT world. Couple of acquisitions, a divorce of sorts, and looking at the top AV in airports. Let's get into it. First up, integrator Forte and its longtime partner GPA will end their 6-year partnership. The split takes place December 31st. GPA confirmed Forte has served as its U.S. regional business unit since 2020. Forte replaced Whitlock in that role after Whitlock merged with AVI SPL. Forte was formerly known as AVI Systems before it rebranded last year. Company is 100% employee-owned through an ESOP. GPA comprises nearly 30 regional business units worldwide. Going forward, GPA will lean on its remaining network of regional partners. Forte says it will now pursue growth on its own. Forte chairman and CEO Jeff Stabner called the 6 years with GPA one of the company's most rewarding stretches. Both companies say they will manage the transition carefully to protect customers. Elgato's parent company, Corsair Gaming, has taken a minority stake in BitFocus. BitFocus is the Oslo-based company behind the Companion and Button Control platforms. Companion has powered Elgato's Stream Deck for nearly a decade. The open source platform has hundreds of thousands of installations worldwide. Buttons brings that same control layer to broadcast and live event production. It integrates with video switchers, playback systems, lighting, and graphics. The companies previously teamed up on Stream Deck Studio, released in 2024. Corsair says the investment will speed up joint research and development for both companies. BitFocus will remain an independent company under the deal. The financial terms of the investment were not disclosed. Uniguest has acquired digital signage provider Vissix. Vissix is based in Atlanta and has operated for more than 4 decades. The company builds digital signage, room scheduling, and wayfinding systems. Its product line include the Axis TV Signal signage suite and e-paper workplace displays. Its technology serves corporate campuses, universities, and healthcare systems. Uniguest says the deal expands its reach into workplace and campus communications. The company calls those markets a growing strategic priority. Uniguest is a portfolio company of Atlantic Street Capital. The Vissix deal follows earlier Uniguest acquisitions across healthcare, senior living, and hospitality. It also follows deals in the sports and education market. Uniguest CEO Matt Ghosh says workplace and campus communication is a growing priority for its customers. Atlas IED has installed its communication system in 24 of the top 30 airports in the U.S. and Canada. That's according to J.D. Power's 2025 North America Airport Satisfaction Study. The study drew feedback from more than 30,000 travelers. It scored airports across 7 areas, including ease of travel and trust. Atlas IED's system appear in 10 of the top mega airports in the ranking. They also appear in 6 of the top 10 large airports, and they appear in 8 of the top 10 medium airports. Atlas IED says its system supports multilingual messaging and emergency notifications. The company says its platforms are built to scale across large facilities. Atlas IED's Director of Global Installed Systems, John Goodrich, says airports need platforms that deliver strong speech intelligibility at scale. And finally, the Alliance for IP Media Solutions, or better known as AIMS, and the Video Services Forum have set their IBC 2026 schedule. The event is called IP Showcase on the Water. The free event runs September 13th during IBC 2026 in Amsterdam. It features 7 canal cruises departing from Strandzuid near the Rye. The Rye, of course, is where IBC is located. Each cruise offers 2 20-minute sessions for 14 presentations total. Speakers will come from companies including AWS, NVIDIA, Ross Video, and Grass Valley. Lawo, Matrox Video, and Imagine Communications will also present. Sessions will cover dynamic media facilities, AI, and cloud control planes, and cyber resilience. Other sessions will cover IPMX certification and open control technologies. Organizers are also sponsoring the Decode TV Green Line travel initiative again this year. The Green Line offers a low-carbon train route from London to Amsterdam ahead of IBC. Registration for the IP Showcase is free and open now. And of course, AVNation will be there to cover IBC 2026, the 11th through the 14th of September. That's your AV News for the week. Stick around. Our roundtable debates public versus private companies and what happens when your favorite vendor gets into a little bit of controversy. That conversation is next. This is AV Week. Welcome back. Now we bring in our fantastic roundtable with us to, let's be frank, tackle a couple of interesting topics. First and foremost, Kelly Teal. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello. Thank you for having me, as always.
Absolutely. Good to see you. Also with us is my brother, Mr. Mark Coxon from AVI SPL's XTG. Welcome, sir.
How are you, Tim?
I am fantastic. Good to see you. Also with us, a young man. This is his first time for you, so you two be nice to him. His name is Chris Bishop from Lentech, just down the road from me in Kansas City. Welcome, sir.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, this will be fun. Couple stories that are very unusual, and I will admit that right off the bat. Neither of these stories have anything to do with technology, really. Okay? So let's start there. First story. A podcaster by the name of Pablo Torre, he reported a couple weeks ago that display manufacturer Daktronics had an undisclosed sponsorship deal with Clippard star Kawhi Leonard. Okay, that's the headline. And Coxon, our old friend Josh Schrago, sent me a text and said, I didn't have Daktronics embroiled in a NBA investigation on my bingo card. That's fair. Neither did I. Never imagined that Daktronics would be on ESPN's website investigated in an NBA investigation. However, this is what happened. The report certainly triggered an NBA investigation into possible salary cap circumvention. Daktronics, we all know, they do, large displays in transportation, certainly live events. They are the ones responsible for the Halo scoreboard at the Clippers Intuit Dome, which was put that whole thing in the middle of the story. A Daktronics spokesperson confirmed the sponsorship contract had ended, and nobody has accused Daktronics of any wrongdoing. However, they are pulled into the middle of all of this. So, Kelly, we're going to start with you, because you're the one, you and Mark both specify products and specify manufacturers. When your favorite manufacturer is pulled into something like this, how do you deal with it? How should a manufacturer's reputation in stuff like this, should that weigh into an evaluation when you're just looking at how the technology can best solve the solution?
So I see it two different ways, right? Personally, as just on my own personal beliefs, yes, I do think it should weigh in. What the company I'm working for believes may be a different story. There may be some leeway there. And this is not just saying for this this story specifically only. But like you said, Daktronics is one of the biggest names in large format displays and digital signage, right? And they have unexpectedly found themselves connected to this ongoing investigation, which is always going to make someone's ears perk up or eyes open. Now, I think it is important to distinguish that the allegations against the Clippers from Daktronics is itself at this point, Daktronics has not been accused of, wrongdoing. From what my understanding, the company did confirm that the sponsorship agreement with Leonard had existed previously and has since ended. So I think that's an important piece of the story, but I think the broader circumstances surrounding that relationship have now pulled, what we would consider a very major AV manufacturer into a high-profile sports investigation. It creates an interesting issue for our industry because Daktronics isn't exclusively a sports company. It's a technology that is deployed in corporate environments, transportation, retail, and other major infrastructure projects. So, the company itself reported, I think, more than $800 million in net sales for 2026 for the fiscal year. So the question becomes, I think, what responsibility do designers and consultants, integrators alike, and end users alike have when a manufacturer or vendor becomes associated with a controversy that has nothing to do with the performance of the products? And that's where I think, as a company, I guess, agreement or process or understanding may be different from my own personal beliefs. Because when we're specifying products, we're specifically and typically evaluating things like technical performance, reliability, interoperability, service, cost, and then the financial stability. So I guess what I would ask myself is, does that reputational risk also become part of the vendor evaluation? And where do we draw that line? Where should we draw that line? There's a major difference between a company actually being accused of wrongdoing and a company simply becoming connected to an investigation because one of its business relationships. I won't say how the industry should handle controversies because this is not common, right? This is not something that happens
At all,
in our
yeah.
industry, at least. It's not common, at least that I know of. But how should we handle those surrounding the manufacturers and vendors that we specify? At what point does a controversy become significant enough to reconsider doing business with a company? And how much due diligence can we reasonably expect consultants and integrators to perform on the companies behind the products that we specify? And I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm not saying we shouldn't put that work in. But I think unfortunately, I think it comes down to the controversy in itself. And, that's why I said it's important to also, consider the fact that they weren't accused of any wrongdoing. But it's definitely something I would personally look at. But if it's the right product for the right situation and the right system and the right client at the right price, we may have to overlook some of those things.
I mean, I live in LA and does anybody even really care what happens with the Clippers?
Oh, come on.
that was kind of my first thought on this story. No, I mean, I agree a lot with what Kelly said. I think I have a personal opinion on, what I find, ethically challenging and morally right. And does that affect what we as an industry do? And I'm going to be a little glib on this and say, historically, AV has not rendered any judgment on bad actors with share of wallet. We've had companies that their CEOs were accused of propositioning employees' wives. We've had companies show up with booth models in clad conversation.
We've had CEOs go to jail, brother.
I understand. Exactly. We've had CEOs go to jail. We've had stripper robots at trade shows. We've had, and have any of these things affected the brand's sales in any significant way? Most of these companies still exist today. Companies are still doing business with them. In AV, honestly, Daktronics' biggest problem in the AV market is that they sell direct to customers. I guarantee you that affects their reputation more than if they were back channeling some money to Leonard. In fact, NBA teams may go, you know what, let's get Daktronics in here. Maybe we can get some new players. They're willing to play ball and do some extra stuff. I'm not saying that they did or didn't. But what I'm saying is that in AV, I don't think these things have historically come into play. And I would love to say that we do punish bad actors for moral and ethical, faults, but I don't think we have historically, and I don't think this is going to be any different, even if Daktronics was found to be doing something wrong, which I don't think they actually were. I don't think I don't think it had anything to do with them. But I'm just saying, I don't think as an industry we've historically done it, and I don't think that this is going to affect it either, for better or for worse.
All right. Real quickly, you can shoot. You can shoot me an email. I'll give you the list of CEOs that have gone to jail. Off the top of my head, though, you've got the Yahoos who ran MCSI, and you know that was 25 years ago, though, so that's a long time ago. Chris, completely different question because you are on the manufacturer side. I'm reminded of a couple different things, and I'm serious. I think I can count on one hand the number of times we see, let's say, traditional AV manufacturers in publications in a negative light outside of the industry. One is AMX 10 years ago. Ars Technica ran a story because there was a backdoor in one of the White House's programs.
I am Batman,
right? That was 10 years ago, right? I honestly can't off the top. I can't think of many others. This is another instance, right, where again a traditional AV company comes out into the wild, as it were, on ESPN's website and others as well. From a manufacturer standpoint, something like this happens. How do you handle that from both your customers, right, the integrators and the folks that put your stuff in, but also from the customer's standpoint? Almost like a PR question here is how do you handle reputation and controversy?
That's a fantastic question. Unfortunately, not one I'm probably super well versed in, as I've never really been on the PR side. So from a manufacturer's standpoint, I think, when we're going into business, whether it's a new integration partner, a new supplier or a new vendor supplying us parts to make our products, or, even if we are doing a deal with, as how Daktronics has, an end user, we're always going to try to vet them, right? We're always going to sit here and ask around, try to get to know information about them from other individuals who have worked with them, and trying to understand, hey, are these guys, operating well? Do they have good cash flow? Are they going to be able to pay their bills? And yes, one of the things that we do vet is, hey, are these guys going to potentially damage our brand within the industry? And I know, at least on our side, that has kind of stopped us from doing work with certain individuals in the past, because we just thought, all right, this isn't really a great fit. We're not getting good feedback regarding these guys. And so we just don't want to move forward with this new integration partnership, or so on and so forth. But the problem, though, is that when you're vetting, companies, whether it's on the integration side or on the supplier side, you can only find out so much on the internet and by talking with other people, right? You're not always going to find where all the bodies are buried, and you're never going to know just how many skeletons are in the closet. And so then that kind of comes to the next point of your question, which is how do you handle it? And the first thing that, we always like to do, and that I personally think is the best thing to do, is just kind of take a step back and try to evaluate the situation as a whole and go, okay, what all information is out there? Do we have all the facts? Are the facts that are being reported correct? Because a lot of times on that initial story, you're getting one individual side or one company side of it. And so, I think it's always best to just kind of take a step back and kind of let things flush themselves out, because the truth always does come out, right? But yeah, in terms of how to handle it on the PR side, that's unfortunately not in my wheelhouse. So I don't really want to speak to that one.
No, but you answered it very well, because from a reputation standpoint, you guys doing it, and quite frankly, I've written a couple articles about, in essence, firing customers, right? Which is a little bit of what you were talking about, that is saying no to somebody that may or may not, damage you guys' reputation in the long run. So yeah, good on you guys.
Yeah, we had to make a decision. I say, from like an integrator perspective, I am proud that we've made some decisions like that as well, right? Like, we were asked to potentially be involved in and I won't say the project, but a project that, could have had a lot of racial and historic tension around it. And the objective of the project was not to emphasize anything that would be historically problematic, but the site itself was. And we just had to look at it and say, do we really want our names associated with this site, regardless of the objective, right, of what the project is all about? And unfortunately, we ended up walking away from that, and instead of, potentially taking money and making profit on it. And I think we all have to make some of those decisions with our businesses. And I'm proud when we make the right ones. I thought that was the right one. And I'm proud when the company stands behind those decisions. I also know another manufacturer who they pride themselves on only being involved in things that benefit folks. So if you know the folks over at Seventh Sense, like they won't do any project that has to do with military, with weaponry, anything. So they won't sell their product to an aerospace company that makes missiles because they don't want to be involved with anybody that is in military conflict or things like that, right? So we do see some manufacturers that make some of these moral judgments, and it limits their market. But it's really cool to see companies like that if they do have that strong opinion and strong moral kind of boundary, it's cool to see them holding to it in a market and just going after the projects that they really feel are something that they would be proud of being involved in. So,
yeah, absolutely. All righty. Next story, and this one is going to be interesting for a whole lot of reasons. ADI Global Distribution, they've completed their spinoff from Resideo Technologies, and they have begun trading independently on the New York Stock Exchange. The stock ticker, easy thing for me to say, is ADIG. Resideo shareholders received 1 share of ADI stock for every 2 shares of Resideo stock they held. Of course, ADI distributes security, AV, and fire and life safety products. ADI CEO Rob Arns said the company now has a clearer path to pursue growth independently. Now, for AV and IT buyers who purchase through ADI's channel, the spinoff changes ADI's ownership structure, but not its day-to-day distribution role, at least for now. That ownership structure is what I want to get into, Mr. Coxon. My question is this. I'm going to say there's like 4 or 5 different flavors of ownerships. Before I start this, I have to remind folks, AVNation is owned by CTI. CTI is a wholly owned company, single person owns CTI, okay? Different people on this call have different ownership structures.
Yes, sir.
Overarching question here. What's the best ownership structure? Is it private equity? Is it a publicly traded company, right? Because when you get into publicly traded company, even more difficult than PE, now you have stockholders who have different perspectives and different objectives, right? Or is it, the wholly owned, single person owned, or like Forte, it is a stock, it's an ESOP, but it's employee owned, right? So from your perspective, and you've worked for a bunch of different ones, what's the best ownership structure for the industry?
I have worked for a lot of different ones, and I hate to say it depends, but I really do think it depends. I think it depends on what stage the company is in. I think it depends on what the objectives of the company are in the short and long term based on that stage and what those kind of different structures could give them, right? So for me personally, I think, when I'm looking out at companies that need to be innovative and are needing to invent new things and potentially put in, sweat and tears into something that needs to be created but hasn't been created yet, that private ownership works really well because you're not beholden to a number, you're not beholden to an equity group, you're not beholden to a stockholder that has a revenue goal. Your goal, your mission is to create this thing that nobody's created before, right? And to get that working, and you need to be dynamic and able to do that. So, one of the knocks on investment coming in, whether it be going to IPO or going to private equity, is that the number sometimes becomes more important than the product, right? In the short-term cycle, you get beholden to a kind of a quarterly number as opposed to like what is the actual overall objective. And I think that can be a risk depending on what stage your company is. And you'll see a lot of like really cool products who are scooped up by big companies, and then those products kind of disappear, or they get watered down, or they're not as special as they were. The people that were there that were created it are now subjected to a culture that doesn't actually help them to invent the new thing that they're capable of because they're in this like large structure where things aren't very flexible, et cetera. I think if you're a company that's looking to scale, like if you're an integrator like us, and, we have customers that are in different countries all over the world, having a private equity group that can help you scale into markets where you need to actually then go in and create a footprint before you have business there is an amazing an amazing advantage, right? To having that. So I think there are structures where that really makes a lot of sense. And as far as the public IPO, I think if you're a company that really needs the brand recognition from kind of a consumer level or a public level, I think that can really help, right? Like Zoom became a household name and had this huge IPO, became a force. Other Fortune 500 companies saw them as, I guess, more legitimate because they're being traded on a public market. They're more willing to take a risk on them with their enterprise, IT, et cetera, because they're a known quantity that people are trading. So I think there are some things, it depends. I think it does depend on where you're at, but if you need money to scale as a business, IPO and private equity are great, as long as you have that long-term objective in mind and you're using the funds towards that, and you don't get caught up in the cycle of just trying to chase revenue for revenue's sake. So it does depend on the culture as well that you maintain through those transitions.
Chris, same kind of question is both from a manufacturer standpoint as well as the integrator partners that you guys have. What have you seen as some of the best ownership structures in the industry?
I don't really know which one's the best because Mark kind of touched on it. There are basically pros and cons to, the 4 or 5 general structures, that you had mentioned. Again, private equity, publicly traded companies, receiving in that cash flow and that capital can really help take a company to the next level, right? It can help with product development, as Mark said, entering into new market channels, and things of that nature, which can be very beneficial. The con being you do give up control and, again, misaligned incentives in terms of, ownership or, stockholders or shareholders not caring about, revenue in 3, 4, or 5 years, but more caring about revenue next quarter. And, on the private side, having and maintaining control can be very beneficial, right? But when you're limited to the cash flow coming in the door from last month's sales, it definitely can hinder some timelines in terms of how quickly you're able to get some of those things done. So I don't think it's necessarily one or the other is best for the industry. I think what we are currently seeing in the industry over the last 5 or 10 years is a lot of consolidation, right? We have seen a lot more companies go towards private equity or going out and becoming publicly traded. And I think you can look at those companies and go about it in both manners and say, hey, some of these companies went this way, and here are all the different products that they developed. Here are the ecosystems that they were able to bring to customers that really made their life better. And then on the flip side, there are also companies where, again, as Mark alluded to it, they watered down products. They bought a company for widget A and not widgets B, C, and D, and so they killed them off. So it's just different. It's kind of hard. It just depends on the company, really. But I think in the industry, we have seen a lot of consolidation over the last few years, which, it's been fascinating to watch, to say the least. So
it is fascinating to watch, and I am not a fortune teller by any stretch of the imagination when I say this. It's not done. It's not going to be done, and we all kind of know that. So,
oh yeah.
Kelly, you'll have the last word on this from not just from your perspective, just the overarching industry. Does it come down to it depends, or from your perspective, what is the best ownership structure for a manufacturer or an integrator for that matter?
And if we're talking industry, I think also it's important to note that this is significant because ADI is not a peripheral player. It's a major global distributor of low voltage technology across commercial security and even residential AV, fire and life safety, and data communications. Becoming an independent company means that ADI now has its own shareholders and leadership priorities and financial expectations, rather than operating as one part of a larger Resideo organization. And with that said, I think what ADI's leadership is presenting, at least what I'm taking from this, is that they're presenting the separation as an opportunity to create a more focused company within its own growth strategy. And I see this a lot. And we're already getting a glimpse of the scale of the standalone business. with them reporting their second quarter net revenue of roughly over $1 billion. So the spinoff kind of gives us an opportunity to talk about a much larger trend within AV specifically, but as a whole in this industry is who should own the companies that make up our industry, right? We've watched manufacturers and integrators and distributors operate under very, very different ownership structures, and some remain privately held, others become publicly traded, and then we've also seen significant private equity investment and consolidation throughout the industry. So each model, I feel, brings something different. Public companies can have access to significant capital, and they can use that capital for acquisitions and research and development and expansion, but they also have shareholders and quarterly financial expectations that can create a pressure for continuous growth and profitability, because once you add shareholders, there is always that bottom line, right? Because you want to keep the shareholders happy. Private companies can potentially make longer term decisions without having to satisfy their public markets every quarter or their shareholders every quarter. They may also have greater control over company culture and strategy, but they don't necessarily have the same access to capital that a large public company does. And private equity can also inject substantial capital and accelerate acquisitions and help companies scale very quickly. But at the same time, I think most critics, for lack of a better term, would worry that aggressive growth targets, debt, and eventual expectation of an exit can sometimes prioritize financial returns over employees, customers, or their long-term investments. So I think it brings us back to the debate of which ownership model is actually the healthiest for the industry. Do these public companies create more innovation because they have access to capital, or does pressure from shareholders eventually interfere with long-term decision making? And then with the private equity continuing to consolidate parts of the industry, does that investment make our industry stronger and more sophisticated, or are we all at risk of turning companies that historically competed on engineering, service, and relationships into financial assets primarily focused on maximizing their eventual sale value? I think ADI becoming an independent public company gives us a timely example to ask the bigger question, public, privately held, or private equity backed, which model ultimately produces the best outcome for the industry. It's customers and the people who work in it, essentially. I think I won't say that one is better than the other. I think there's pros and cons and risks to each each model, if you will, each business model. But can I say, with confidence, one is better than the other? No, because I think they both present something very, very different. Do I think something catastrophic is going to happen with ADI, changing their business model? I don't think catastrophic, but it could deter, or it could also increase, their sales and their customer feedback, and at the same time, it could drive people away. So I think it all depends on what you're looking for out of ADI.
Tim, I'd love to connect the dots on both of these conversations, because I think at the end of the day, our companies are made of people, right? And to invoke Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yep.
Right. And so you can have a business strategy and how you're growing your business, whether it be private equity, IPO, continued, private ownership, et cetera. But if you don't have the right people at the helm with the right intention, serving the customer, the end customer, you're going to lose eventually. Right. You just are. And, so I think it really does come down to the people at the top, the culture they build, the people they employ, and ultimately, that all passes down. Happy employees create happy customers. Right. And so, you want to look if it's valuable or not, look at the people that work there. And if they are providing value and seem generally happy with where they work, that's probably a pretty good structure for whatever company that is.
That'll be a good place to stop. Thank you all so much. Kelly Teal, how do people connect with you?
I am on LinkedIn only, so I'm under Kelly Teal.
All right, very good, simple enough. Mr. Coxon, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you?
Mark Coxon on LinkedIn. And of course, if you want to read anything I've written, I'm on Rave Pubs. You can search by author under the blog squad there. And always go to avispl.com/xtg if you want to see what I do for a living.
And you can also follow along to Mr. Coxon's other writings on LinkedIn. So you should definitely follow him there. Mr. Bishop, thank you, sir. Very nice to have you. How would people connect with you or Lintech?
No, thank you very much. For me, I'm just on LinkedIn, and then Lintech is just lintech.com, which is lyntec.com.
All right, very good. Thank you all so much. For me, for Tim Albright, don't follow me anywhere, but go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Couple of programming notes, I guess. We are heading to IBC the 11th through the 14th of September. If you're not familiar with IBC, it is the broadcast show over in Europe. So you can check out that coverage because, quite frankly, it's already happening. Mitchell and the team are already getting press releases for that. I'm also doing the keynote at Almo E4 in Dallas, September 15th, and Boston, October 15th. You can find out more information about that and register at e4experience.com. But go by the website, avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. That's all the time we have for AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AV Nation.
This is AV Nation.